I've got about 20 minutes to talk a little bit about Coursera and what we've been up to. Before I start, I would just like to thank Michael Moe and the Coursera team for hiring me. I've been here almost a year, and it has been absolutely thrilling. And videos like the one that you've seen really bring home for me why Coursera was founded and what my job is as a CEO, which is to take the best education in the world and make it available to everybody in any place at any level of income. And we're well on our way. So the way I like to think about this is, before we talk about our products and our business and our team, what's this really about? What are the prime movers that create the opportunity for Coursera? And I like to say that the future of work and the future of learning are converging. And they're converging because of two primary factors. Number one is globalization. Number two is technology. And it's really a rate of change problem. The world is changing very, very rapidly because of things like data, things like compute power, things like social media that are really accelerating the rate of change in our lives. There's a book that I was reading about a year ago before I got the call about the opportunity here at Coursera, which is called Thank You for Being Late by Thomas Friedman. And he talks about the age of accelerations and kind of where human civilization kind of finds ourselves right now. And there are a couple of charts that he has in there, one of which I put here and I think is really interesting, which is that he's got two curves. There's human adaptability, which is what is the rate of change of humans to adapt to changes in the ecosystem around them and their world, and what's the rate of change of technology. What he argues, and this was actually from Teller over at Google, is that we've gotten to a point where the rate of change of technology is outpacing humans' ability to deal with it. And what he says is we need to learn faster and govern smarter. Those are his two basic prescriptions. One of the ways to think about what Coursera is doing is that we're trying to bend that curve so that more people can learn more rapidly to stay relevant and be engaged and find opportunity in a really fast-changing world. McKinsey has done a study. A lot of folks have done studies, but McKinsey's done, I thought, a very thoughtful study that looked at technology that exists today with respect to sensors, AI, robotics, et cetera, and not just job classifications, but actually job activities, and said what activities and which jobs could be automated using certain technology that exists today. And they found that 50% of jobs had activities that are at risk of automation in the next 20 years, which obviously could be a compounded problem because many of these jobs are the more routine, repetitive, predictable types of tasks that are typically held by people with generally lower education. What exacerbates this problem even more on a global basis is that there will be, by many demographic projections, more than 300 million people entering the global workforce in the next 10 years. And when you look at where they're planning to be entering the workforce, their expectation is that in India there'll be about 100 million new people in the next 10 years. And when they looked at the jobs that might be automated by technology in India, it's not the same across every country. In India, they estimate 52% of jobs at a time when 100 million people are entering. In China, where 60 million people will be entering the workforce in the next 10 years, they estimate that over 50% of the jobs could be impacted by technology. And then the third largest segment is 40 million new entrants to the workforce in Brazil, where they estimate about 50% of those jobs could be affected by technology. And then there's about 100 million new people entering the workforce in the rest of the world. But it's really a tough situation where you have demographics pushing so many people into the workforce at a time when so many jobs are likely going to be impacted. And so McKinsey concludes that about 375 million people around the world are likely to be impacted by automation in the next 10 years. So that's the bad news. The bad news is that technology threatens to do a lot of negative things. It threatens to increase the amount of fear and anger and resentment and outrage that otherwise somewhat stable societies would have. I think it undermines a lot of institutions, and it threatens to displace many, many people, impacting their jobs and in some cases eliminating their jobs. Now the good news is that technology holds great promise. And especially for a company like Coursera, we believe that technology holds the promise to offer the best education in the world to anyone in the world. And it might be a slight exaggeration because you do need to have at least a mobile phone, and you do need to be literate, which is not certainly something that everybody has in the world. But education is really being redefined. And when we look at the IMBA program, which you saw in the video, and we talked to those graduates of that program who just graduated in Illinois, they walked across the stage the day before Mother's Day. I was out there celebrating with them. It was remarkable to see the number of ways in which online learning, especially in higher ed, can match and even in many cases surpass what the learning experience is like in a physical classroom. I'll talk a little bit about how we're bringing this technology to bear on our partners. When you think about Coursera and how we want to realize this vision of offering the best education in the world to everyone in the world, we think about our business model as a three-sided platform. And I give a lot of credit to the founders, Andrew Ng and Daphne Koller. Andrew had the wisdom and foresight in 2012 to put one of his machine learning courses up on the web and open it up as the first massively open online course. And he did that, and over 100,000 people came and took that course. And he was friends with Daphne, and they were talking, and Daphne's husband, Dan Avita, was good friends with Scott Sandell over at NEA. Scott called John Doerr over at Kleiner like, hey, we might be onto something here. This idea that higher education with increased bandwidth, the ability to stream video, mobile devices making video much more accessible to the broader population, maybe we should start something. They started Coursera, and it was really Andrew and Daphne as the co-founding CEOs who were able to take that growing learner base and attract a lot of universities to start publishing courses. And they did that because there were a lot of learners. And the more courses that got published, the more learners came, and that became a really nice two-sided platform where each side benefited from the growing presence of the other side. About 2 years ago, we launched Coursera for Business. Leah, who was just up here on the panel, runs that for us right now. And it has been growing spectacularly. Basically, a lot of companies are realizing that in order to keep up with this rate of change, and most, they call it often digital transformation, but mostly what it is, as I've listened to them, it's my customers are changing in ways that I don't understand and faster than I can keep up with the way that they make decisions, with the way they purchase, with the way they behave, with the way they share information, with their expectations for customer service. And my competitors are changing at a faster rate than I can keep up. And of course, those are linked. My competitors, sometimes the small ones, are emerging out of nowhere, building a brand or following on Twitter, and actually becoming real competition for some of the larger incumbent companies out there. So they said, we are not able to teach at the speed and scale required to keep up with the rate of change in our customers and our competitors. We need to bring some kind of a learning platform in-house to better keep up to date with emerging competency needs and to make sure we can deliver this on a global basis. So we offered Coursera for Business. And so right now, if you take a quick snapshot, we have about, now actually it's 33 million learners from around the world come to Coursera to learn and prosper. They learn from our universities. They prosper by helping get identified with companies who are looking for the competencies that they're learning on Coursera. 78% of these learners are from outside the United States. 47% of these learners are from emerging markets. We have 150 of the top universities in the world, and we also now have a growing number of what we call industry partners. These are companies who are authoring and publishing courses on Coursera to teach this world of learners about a certain new technology platform. So Google has authored many courses on Coursera to teach about Google Cloud. They have Google Cloud Developer, Google Cloud Security, Google Cloud Software Architect. They know that unless there's an ecosystem of developers out there who know how to use Google Cloud, the ability of them to sell their platform to other customers will be limited. And so to the extent that businesses, especially technology businesses, are moving more towards ecosystem plays, they need to have a developer community who knows how to develop on their platform. And so education is becoming part of the mission-critical go-to-market strategy for these technology companies. And then finally, on the enterprise side, in the last 2 years, we've now sold to over 1,000 companies who've hired Coursera to offer our catalog of content, learning, and credentials from our partners to upskill and reskill their employees. And we, I think, just hit 35 Fortune 500 companies, and that business, as I mentioned, is growing very rapidly. So you can kind of think of Coursera as a learning platform that brings together what I believe are the three main elements of the learning ecosystem: the learners who need to learn things, the educators who teach them, and ultimately, and I think this is important, ultimately, the employers who reward those competencies and those credentials that show that they have those competencies. The reason we think that the employer is so important is that fundamentally, they will be the ones to arbitrate, at least for commercial reasons, what kinds of competencies am I looking for, and what kinds of credentials will I recognize to signal in a high quality way that you actually have the competencies that I'm looking for. When you look at the learner base out there, we, as I mentioned, have over 30 million learners. Most of them are in North America, followed by Asia, Europe, South America, and then a bit in Africa and Australia. And we're seeing the greatest growth rates in Mexico, India, and Russia. And so we are seeing an awful lot of folks in emerging economies coming onto Coursera. Mobile turns out to be very important for us. And it's interesting, mobile is important on two ends of the spectrum. In emerging markets, it's really important because often people don't have computers. You can download all of our courses on your mobile device and watch it all offline, so you don't actually chew up your data plan. We also find mobile being extremely important among our degree learners who are paying $25,000 for a two-year degree, but for a very different reason. They certainly can afford the data plan and the computers, but there is so much to learn given that they're working. They have to squeeze the learning in every chance they get. So there's a tremendous amount of learning that's actually happening during commutes and in during lunch breaks and after the kids go to bed and sometimes in bed. And so it's really interesting how important mobile is even for very serious degree-seeking students. When you look at the types of companies who've hired us, they are global. We are really seeing most of our success in Europe and North America. Clearly, there are a lot of companies in India who are looking at reskilling. We're also seeing some of more kind of higher level credential demand in some of our Asian companies, but they really do span the globe. We have over 1,000 today. We've grown the number of logos at over 25 times in the last year. Now, when you think about the types of products that we offer, if I put credential value on the x-axis and kind of the learning experience and the time and effort it takes, we started with courses, which are composed of lessons. These are free. You can audit these things for free. If you want to take the test and get this certificate that says you passed the course, you pay about $49, $59. Around 2014, Coursera launched what we call specializations. Those are groups of courses authored by the same university. That's a subscription. People usually pay $49 or $59 a month to buy the specialization. That comes with a credential. That's not quite as big as a degree, but it's definitely more substantial than just a course certificate. And then a couple years ago, we started offering degrees. We now have 4 live degrees, one with HEC Paris. It's a master's in entrepreneurship. Then we have 3 from University of Illinois. We have a master's in accounting, an MBA, and a master's in computer science from the number 5 ranked computer science program in the US. Now, what we're finding is that you appeal to different learners with different types of products. So there are a lot of people who will say, you know, the university credential is dead. And then there are people who say, yeah, these micro-credentials are never going to really get off the ground because the noise-to-signal ratio is going to be way too high. We find that there's a lot of folks who really want to develop competencies. They're not so interested in the credential. Things like open courses and specializations are great for that. This is a young woman I met who is actually a junior at UC Davis. She stopped out of college because she's learning so much on Coursera. She's actually working as a data scientist. And she said, my career is going very quickly. I'm able to learn far more advanced things on Coursera than I could if I were sitting back at Davis. I'm not sure I'm going to go back and finish my bachelor's. Having 3 daughters myself, I said, you should definitely get a bachelor's. I mean, you never know where that might come in handy. You saw Farhad, who was in the video. He was in Afghanistan. He enrolled in the MBA program. So he certainly could have taken a lot of courses on Coursera, just open courses. For his own professional needs, he wanted to have an MBA. He started the program in Afghanistan for various reasons. He needed to flee Afghanistan. He's now in the US. He did not see an interruption to the MBA program, and he just graduated in May, a few weeks ago. So it's really wonderful to see how versatile this learning platform is. And now what we're working on at Coursera, we have something we are just pilot testing called Master Track Certificates. And these are like degree modules. So we've noticed, especially among our enterprise clients, buying a whole degree for your employees, it's a tough pill to swallow. It's a big price tag. It takes a long time. What we're going to do is we're basically testing selling degree modules so that at the MBA we have a bunch of modules. We designed it to be pretty modular. One of those, for example, is digital marketing. Well, instead of making you take the whole MBA in order to get that digital marketing module, we're actually offering that full degree learning experience with live two-way video, with actual professors and TAs, full grades, and it takes a few months, and if you pass that, that credit will count towards your MBA. So you can actually earn degrees in pieces, and people who think that the university degree is going to stay as monolithic and as expensive as it has been, fail to realize that university partners will be very interested and enabled by Coursera in breaking down those degrees into smaller pieces that could be sold in a much more tailored way to a population of users who might not be able to do the full degree at once. They can build those degrees over time. In addition to degrees, we do have these industry partners. One of our big one is from our founder, Andrew Ng. He's done a specialization in deep learning. That's actually our number one seller in the B2C space. Google has come to us, and they put together something called the Google IT Support Professional Certificate. It's a great program where with no college background, no degree, no technical background, you can take a 6-course specialization, be a Google certified IT specialist. And what we did is we went to those 1,000 companies and said, who needs qualified IT people? If you do, we will connect our learners who get the IT certificate to your recruiting department so that our learners become your talent pipeline. And I think this idea that teaching people, upskilling at work certainly makes sense, but also teaching people outside of work and offering a talent pipeline service to our enterprise clients is another way to really reinforce that three-sided business model that we're talking about. When we think about MOOCs and open courses, the way we're thinking about it right now is that MOOCs are the gateway to online degrees. We think degrees will remain a very powerful and valuable credential. But instead of saying, you know what, I'm going to quit my job, I'm going to move to campus, I'm going to pay a very big tuition bill, and either I get the whole degree or I get nothing, people will start by coming to Coursera, take a couple courses, meet the professor, see if you like the material, see if you like the professor, see if you're good at it, and if you are, you can go from a course to a specialization. And that course counts towards the specialization. If you like that specialization, you get a little certificate, that can count towards your degree. So the idea that MOOCs are a way to bring people in at very low cost and get some fraction of them to actually upgrade to a degree over time, we think is a perfect way to introduce lower cost degrees to a far wider range of people. I mentioned that we have 4 live degrees. At our last university partner conference, we announced another 6. A Master's in Computer Science with Arizona State, a Global Master of Public Health with Imperial College London, a full Master's in Computer Science from University of Illinois. The first one that we have right now is just in data science. A Bachelor's of Science in Computer, BS is our first Bachelor's degree in Computer Science with University of London, Goldsmith College. And then University of Michigan has announced 2 degrees. One is a Master's in Public Health and another is a Master's in Applied Data Science. And so one of the really wonderful things too is we have 150 universities who've been authoring on Coursera for the last, some of them, 5 years. And they know how to author courses, and now they're simply upgrading to put their degrees online. But unlike, say, a 2U, we think there's a very different authoring system, there's a different price point, and there is a very different acquisition model using the MOOCs as a freemium sort of top-of-funnel strategy to acquire learners at much lower cost. When you look at the actual quality of the degrees, we've been really pleased by this. Our retention rate's been over 90%. We just graduated our first class in May. And interestingly, over 50% of the folks who are in the degree programs started as a learner on Coursera in one of the open courses. So the promise that this whole MOOC platform actually might be best served as a gateway to online degrees, we think is pretty exciting. And when we think about what the future might look like, I won't read through all these. I have about 25 seconds left. We think the key hallmarks of the future of higher education, number 1 would be access. Making sure that anyone anywhere in the world can access the best possible learning experience from literally the top universities in the world. The idea that you have online and on campus as two discrete things has already broken down. So University of Illinois has online students. They're now using Coursera to offer degree programs to students on campus at Illinois who are double majoring. And now they're starting to do hybrid classes where the online students and the on-campus students are actually sitting in the same live sessions together. So the whole distinction between online and on campus, I think, is breaking apart. And then the ability to use data to really personalize this and to reframe the way the pedagogy works, we think will bring a much more efficient and effective personalized learning experience as well. And then the final thing that's down in the corner there is we think with our platform, helping our industry partners and our enterprises collaborate with universities to make sure that you have the durable knowledge from universities with the more applied requirements from industry will be a wonderful byproduct as well as of having that three-sided platform. So my 1 year anniversary will be June 12th. I've been super excited for the first year. We've been growing very rapidly. We are beating virtually every number, and we're just really thrilled about it. So things have been very good at Coursera, and there'll be a lot more to come. I hope to see you guys here next year. Thank you.